Hey all, here at OS Reviews. You're watching our hands-on review of the Lorex security camera system. This company, Lorex, is actually a subsidiary of FLIR, and if you guys remember, this is the same company that came out with those very cool thermal imaging cameras that could be plugged onto an iPhone or an Android smartphone for better visualization of heat. And it was a very cool little accessory, and it's interesting that this company has now branched out into making other products such as security cameras. So they do have a bit of experience when it comes to optics and photography lenses. So they're bringing that expertise onto their security cameras as well. Some of their models come with night vision, but with full color, so you're able to see the entire scene as if it was very bright outside, even if it's pitch dark. This is a very interesting technology, but it does come at the cost of a slightly higher price. But there are other models that you can also select from Lorex's catalog if you want to get less cameras, if you want to get less expensive versions that may fit different types of needs. The version here includes 4K cameras. There's again 4 of them, and they are dome-shaped, which allows you to pan and tilt and adjust the angle to your liking. So this is definitely more of a brand name compared to past security camera systems that we've checked out as of late, which are more from generic third-party Shenzhen-based companies, hence why this is also considerably more expensive. But whether the performance justifies the higher cost, we'll have to see in this video. So in terms of packaging and presentation, very simple. We have just individually boxed cameras, and I have one actually already opened up over here, and we can see on the side that this one is just the 4K IP eyeball dome camera. Inside we have the quick start guide from the company, as well as a few mounting brackets if you want to attach it onto a ceiling for a more permanent setup. And they always give you a lot of these stickers that you can use. It says protected by Lorex 24 hours, so you can warn people that your house is under surveillance, or for commercial purposes your building is under surveillance. There's also a attachment that you can use to align the mounting process to make sure it's better calibrated, as well as other installation manuals in various languages. Now this version here is not a wireless camera, so just like the other security camera system that we just saw a few weeks ago, you also have to use wires to connect this into the main server box, which includes a hard drive. So you do have to probably wire this behind the ceiling or on the floor. Not quite an elegant solution, but at least you do have a pretty long cable. And over here, there is the camera itself. Now, Lorex does sell a wireless option, but as you probably have guessed by now, that one is even more expensive than the version that we have for review purposes here today. So here's the camera. The entire body is made out of a solid piece of aluminum, so it does feel very hefty. You have some serial number information on the top, as well as a few different grooves to attach the cable more precisely. This is a element-proof camera, so you can safely put it outside. Even if it's raining, it should survive. This is the lens. We also have a bright light/IR light that allows it to see in the dark. Since the other cameras are the same in this particular system, I'm not going to unbox those again, but this is what's included in the main server box, which is a separate box and container that it comes in. You'll in total get actually 2 very large boxes in your front porch when it is delivered to you. One which is filled with the 4 cameras, and one which contains the server. So it's quite a large overall packaging size. So we have a quick connection setup guide that tells us how everything goes together, including the NVR or DVR main setup box, including the power cable, Ethernet cable if you want to use wired connectivity. You can also connect this thing to Wi-Fi if you want to monitor it using a smartphone. There's also an HDMI cable to connect it onto a monitor, USB mouse for controlling the server box, which has a very light Linux-based operating system. There's a remote control for shuffling back and forth between different timestamps, as well as different ports on the back. You can see that this one has in total what seems like 8 channels, so you're able to connect up to 8 cameras, although only 4 cameras are included in this particular setup. So here's the actual DVR setup box itself, and there's another smaller compartment that contains the additional accessories, including the aforementioned AC power, HDMI bonus cable, Ethernet cable, and remote control that we can use to shuffle if I don't want to use the mouse, which is actually just in this little cardboard box. It's just a very generic USB-based mouse, but it's nice that it's included, so you can plug it in and start using it almost like a small desktop computer of sorts. Now, one of the reasons why this setup is a little bit expensive, other than having, again, a more reputable brand name, FLIR, Lorex, is because it offers that 4K video resolution. The 720p and 1080p variants of security camera systems are a lot cheaper currently on the market. If you're looking at 4K, which is currently the max res that you can find in security camera setups, then it's going to cost you considerably more. In fact, Lorex actually does sell a version that is only HD or full HD that is half the price of this. So if you are willing to get slightly lower res, you can save a few bucks. So the setup box itself is actually kind of large in terms of footprint. It's about the size of a standard DVD player, maybe from a few years back. If I put it next to a 11.6-inch Ultrabook, you can get the idea. It's about 2 times in terms of the overall width. So it's definitely something that takes up a bit of extra space on a desk that you have to keep in mind. Maybe you can put it vertically as kind of like a desktop underneath the desk if you really want to save on space. We have access to a few LED lights that will turn on to tell you the status when it's connected to power. There's a dedicated power switch, 4-way navigation toggle, as well as a playback controls directly on this front. On the back, we've got the AC power switch. There's also a safety switch for turning the entire thing on or off. We have the 8 channels for connecting the 8 4K resolution cameras. Ethernet port, VGA port if you don't want to use HDMI. There's a second USB 3.0 port, so you can maybe even connect an additional hard drive or some type of other accessory, or even charge your phone if you want to. And we also have access to additional inputs and outputs for external mics. We've completed the setup, and the initial boot took about 30 seconds for it to turn on and to recognize all of the cameras after plugging it in. You can hear a little bit of a background sound that's just generated by the fans as well as the hard drive. It's about the same noise that you'll find on a desktop computer, and this is what it looks like in terms of space when you put it onto a desk. You can see that the LEDs are on. Respectively, it says 1, 2, and 3, and that's because we currently have 3 cameras connected onto the DV box. And the interface should be very familiar to those who have watched our previous reviews of security systems. It's quite similar. Again, we have 8 boxes divided into spaces for the 8 cameras that it supports up to. Again, we have 3 hooked up right now for demonstration purposes. So if I want to take a closer look at one particular camera, I can simply click on it using the connected mouse, which is, again, a laser mouse that's connected using USB. And actually, the bar of light that you're seeing above the monitor right now is also connected to the DV box as a source of power. So it works with those smaller USB-based accessories since you have 2 ports on board, which is nice. So we have the timestamp information on the top right-hand corner, and it's currently getting a little bit dark, so this image is actually being captured in the IR mode, which is why it's mostly in black and white, as you can see here, and details still seem pretty good. You are able to zoom in using the scroll wheel of the mouse, so if I just use and tap on the scroll here, it will zoom in depending on where the placement of your cursor is. I can also drag it around rather freely. Obviously, you'll see a little bit more of graininess in the image as if you zoom in all the way, but again, if I zoom out, you can see really how far we've zoomed in digitally. I can also right tap on the image to change some of its properties. For certain cameras, depending on the models that you select, you can change the mode from a fisheye to an autofocus, although this one is a fixed focus lens. I can also set a schedule so that whenever it reaches, let's say, 6 p.m., it will automatically turn on the IR night vision black and white mode by itself. So if I'm satisfied with this, I can also change things like saturation, brightness, contrast. If I kind of tweak around with some of these properties, for instance, and set as OK, you'll see a slight change in the image as it adjusts. Now, one thing I did observe while testing it out was because the cable length is rather long, I believe it's around 30 meters, something like that, it actually takes a while for the signal to reach the DVR box. Not in the sense that you're going to have a significant delay with the video footage as it's happening in real time, but the first time that you boot it up, or if you unplug a camera from a port and then replug it back in, you kind of have to wait about 20 seconds for the camera to reinitialize and you're able to see footage being displayed on the screen. So it's a little bit of a latency. Now, the next image we have looking at the backyard, this is in full color. Again, we can see if we can zoom all the way in to crop at details. We are capturing a very wide angle shot within the same frame, which is rather impressive to see. I wouldn't say that it's the most wide angle lens that I've seen, but I would estimate that this is roughly 110, 120 degrees in terms of field of view. So it more than suffices as far as capturing most of the information that you need, including people's faces, as well as objects in the background within one frame of shot. Now, after doing a little bit more testing, this particular version, which again includes the 4K cameras, does not have the color IR night vision. That is a different model that actually does not come at 4K resolution. It comes at 1080p. So if you do want that feature, which is really what the company FLIR is known for, their thermal imaging technology, then you probably would want to go for that one instead. If you are always working in darker environments, if you're capturing, let's say, animals or scenes outdoors consistently at night, then again, that would be the version that you would want to take a closer look at. Overall, the shot already looks fairly natural. It's not a autofocus camera as aforementioned, so text that's really up close to the lens won't be captured quite as well, but for the most part, again, it works really nicely. Again, the sun is starting to set right now, so it is getting fairly dark, but the camera makes the scene look much brighter than it really is, so it's nice. It captures a nice amount of detail. Right now, we are in the transition mode where it's just going back and forth between all of the various cameras that are connected, and it will oscillate between different types of viewback experiences to randomly give you a more precise view, sometimes zoomed in, sometimes zoomed out. But you can tell how there's a little bit of a delay as it goes back and forth between some of these shots, just because, again, 4K is a pretty high resolution, so there's quite a bit of processing that the DVR box has to do. It's not necessarily intelligent enough either to know that the 4 other cameras aren't connected onto the DV box. So sometimes you'll get these blank screens which aren't necessarily helpful. So maybe in the future there will be a software update that gets rid of some of these random sequences that are showing off instances where we don't have any camera footages at all. Here's the playback screen, and it gives us a calendar view where we can sort by to take a look at footage recorded by day as well as by instance. So things like alarms that are triggered will also be showing up in a list that you can select and take a closer look at. It will also have a timestamp on the bottom here, including a color code that tells us when it was recorded, when an alarm was triggered, when motion was detected. All of these things can be more precisely recognized just by taking a look at, again, the color stamp on the bottom of the display. If I want to look at a particular point in time, I simply would tap on that part and it will come into view, and again, we have all of that footage stored onto the 2 TB of hard drive storage. And of course, we can also take a look at the specific instances and logs of motion detections that were triggered, and I can of course set this to give me a notification when they happen, in addition to when particular actions were called, such as playing back a particular scene in slow motion. It's all recorded into this log, which is actually pretty cool. That's more or less it for our hands-on review of the Lorex 4K Ultra HD NVR security system. As a whole, I would say performance is actually quite good in terms of being easy to use, easy to configure, having up to 8 cameras at 4K resolution that can be connected to the box at all times, as well as having good performance both in day and night. Obviously, with the 4K resolution, there's more data and takes up more storage space, but we can also zoom in and fine crop, as well as take a look at more details, such as people's faces, perhaps even letters, as well as a finer text if they do appear into a scene, which can be very useful for commercial applications. I would probably say that this is a set that's best suited, again, for commercial use. If you are a small business owner, or if you do have a property and a rather large lot and you have more space to cover, then perhaps you can consider this. However, for more general consumers, I would say that maybe a slightly less expensive version offered by Lorex or another competitor, maybe at 720p or 1080p, that's typically around $300 or $200, will probably suffice. So thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. This has been our video. You can check out more details in the links down below, but that's it for now. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.